I don't like to call it a sermon. It's more like a testimony. So it's a way for me to share a little bit in the context of our worship service, a little bit of the lessons I've learned, that important, different and important and new and old lessons I keep learning and relearning every year as I go back to Uganda, particularly Kampala and Kumi this year. So I thought I'd tell some stories, basically. Now, this text came to me because, you know, the text in and of itself is one of those, you know, passages that the Bible is full of, like where you go, you read it and you go, huh, right? I mean, how can, when troubles come your way, how would you, without, you know, being a little cuckoo in the head, you know, say, oh, you know, this is nothing but joy, right? Or is this some kind of masochistic, whatever, invitation? And so you wonder, what does that mean? What is James talking about when he says, consider it pure joy, or nothing but joy, or an opportunity for great joy, or as Ed said, sheer gift. You like that? Sheer gift. And every year, you know, I come back and I report many joyful and wonderful things. And I get an opportunity to do that. Now, I don't get to share maybe some of the things that, or maybe I don't want to, share some of the things that I struggled with, but that have been challenges for me. And believe it or not, they're there every year. And there's always, every year I go back, I've been going back for now, let me see, first time was 97, so how many years is that? 14 years. Every year there's always a moment where I'm just kind of like complaining to God and saying, why did you bring me here? You know, kind of like that. And so I thought, in light of this passage, something that I could share would be something that I'm a little bit reluctant, let's say, and maybe even a little ashamed to admit is these kinds of prayers that I only want God to hear and no one else. But this year, I thought I'd share something of that. So, would you pray with me? God, may the words of my mouth and the reflection and meditation of all our hearts be pleasing and acceptable to you, our refuge, rock, and redeemer. Amen. Okay, so, as I said, there are three, maybe I want to introduce you to three people. I meet a lot of people, and I deal with a lot of people in Uganda, and I thought I'd tell you three people who I've met whose encounter has caused me to kind of break down and complain to God. Okay, so can you go to the next slide? Okay, so this is my classroom at Reformed Theological College in Kampala, where I teach music classes of all kinds. These are all students from many different regions of Africa, mostly East Africa. We have of course, Ugandan students, Kenyan students, Rwandese, Burundi, from Burundi, and we have Congolese, and we have one Cameroonian student. And they are all very gifted musicians and worship leaders who are here because they've been called to serve as in capacity of musician or worship leaders in their communities. So they come and get trained, and I do what I can to share some of my training and experience with them, and they share theirs. And so this is my worship class this year, and I want to just, you get to maybe hear a little bit more about some of these students later on during lunch, but I want to share, introduce you to this one lady who's sitting right in the front row, the smiling lady with the sunglasses. Now, this is Agnes Tabu. Agnes Tabu is from Rwanda. She's in her, I would say, 30s. And when she was a teenager, in the mid-90s, she experienced the genocide, the Civil War and the genocide. And so she, well, of course, I had assumed, you know, I have had Rwandese students who've gone through genocide before. So it wasn't as though I hadn't heard the story or something like that. It was a brand new anything. But I've never actually had someone who's gone through that experience kind of have a personal, what should I say, encounter in the way that was very hurtful to me, actually, happen. So what happened was we had some policy changes so that we had to move a concert date to an earlier time, and the staff made a decision together because we thought, oh, you know, it would be better because they usually go away after their term is over, and then they come back for the concert after 6 months, which means they go without practicing for 6 months, and then they come back and have to cram and then do a performance, which didn't make any sense to me. So I said, why don't they do their performance right at the end of their term? That would make a lot more sense, and that's how it's done in every school that I know of. And so I thought that would be helpful to the students, and it was in the best interest of everyone concerned. But it was very strange. The reaction I got from Agnes in particular was this really negative. I mean, like the vibe you get, like she was there and she put her hand up like this and her face froze up. She said, no. I mean, like really, like as though I was about to kill her. Like that seriously. There was like, I'd never experienced that kind of emotional reaction from something I had caused. So it was very disconcerting to me. I mean, I could not, I lost sleep over it, and I was like kind of shaking in my boots because I couldn't understand what I had done or said to cause, you know, such a reaction to me in particular. So I had to kind of get over it. I was like shaking and, you know, I had to get over it. But then we had a meeting. We had a meeting of all of the staff and the students to try to kind of talk it out and explain, you know, our reasonings to reassure them that it was for their sake and not to give them a hard time or anything like that. And yet she was just kind of immovable. Like everyone else seemed to kind of get it, but it was still as though there was, and she's a very bright student. She's one of my best students, okay? She's a very bright student who would just refuse to. And so while I was talking and while the meeting was going on, and there were lots of other people and other students, I saw that there was, behind that, I had this intuitive sense, even though I didn't understand anything about it. There was a lot of fear, like immediate danger that she was sensing because of the body memory she had from the experiences, traumatic experiences she had gone through. She had witnessed her father and her brother being killed in front of her as a teenager, and she was hit with the tip of a gun on the head, so she still kind of suffered. She has some physical issues that she suffers from as well still. And so when she hears something that potentially scares her, the reaction then automatically becomes that she goes right back basically to where, even after many years of therapy, this has been already 15 years coming. And of course I had rationally understood that, but I had this sense there was fear that needed to be kind of penetrated And so I don't know what got into me. I'm not usually a demonstrative person, physically or verbally. But as we were ending the meeting and students were dispersing and talking amongst themselves, I just went up and put my hand on her shoulder and I said, I love you. I don't know, I think it was perhaps the spirit moving. I love you, even though I was still kind of like shaken up. But it came out, and I have since experienced that in situations where the spirit kind of allows me to do things that I wouldn't normally have the wisdom or the courage to do. I love you, I love you. I kept saying that, looking at her face, and she started to cry. She started to cry, and I had talked to the other long-term missionaries about it later on, and there was a very wise older lady who we call Joy, and Joy is a woman of prayer. She intercedes like in ways that you wouldn't believe. She intercedes for people for hours at a time, and she says that's the heart. That's the hurt melting as she cries. So you need to go back and continue to make that connection. And you know, she doesn't have, her family is gone, and so I visited her room and she served me with a nice punch drink, and we talked, and she shared a little bit about her experiences. And she, as I was leaving, she said she cannot remember the last time someone told her, I love you. And so, and in the midst of, this was in the midst of 10 other things that were happening with my students. This year, I shared briefly with Emily, actually, when she came back. How was it? I said it was very emotionally grueling because we had a whole bunch of number of students who were dealing with serious issues like that. And so I felt like, so this was one among many, and I was just kind of like overburdened. I was like, I'm not a trained therapist, and I don't do social work, and I'm just a musician who's kind of shy, and I don't, I'm not going to go and, counsel people. That's not my gifting. And I was like, why did you put me in this situation, God? And I'm complaining and complaining and complaining. So that's one story. Can we go to the next? Okay, so this is Sheila Keddy. And some of you, many of you maybe know her face because she's kind of our poster child. She is, this was when she was a little younger. She was 9. This was when we visited in 2009. Can you go to the next picture? This is Sheila when I visited this year with Grace Among, one of the YCVM workers. Here she is 11, although she looks younger. She's in the 4th grade still because she's had to stay back from school so much. She's HIV positive. She was born HIV positive, and she's very sick right now. That's why she doesn't look so happy. I've known her since she was 4, because when I first visited, she was staying with Silver because her father died before she was born from AIDS, and then her mother, who's HIV positive, transmitted her disease. So, and her mother survives still because of the ARVs, the antiretroviral drugs that are available now. But she remarried and didn't tell the new husband that she was HIV positive. So she kind of abandoned her because she was kind of hidden away, in other words. And so she grew up with Silver, who's been taking care. And since then, she let her husband know that, she's taking drugs and all of that. So so it's known now, and it's okay. And they've actually had children together, and who are okay. They're healthy. So she has, and so. And of course, Sheila, knowing her mother is in the next village over, had always wanted to, be with her mother. So she lives with her stepfather and her mother right now, with her many, half and step siblings, right? Because her stepfather had children from prior marriage, and also now they have their own children. And they're all healthy except for Sheila. Sheila is the only one who is sick. When we visited her that day, she had an ear infection, she thinks. And she had a high fever, and she was not, and some kind of heart problem, and constantly having fevers, having missed many days. And so through Grace's translation, we were able to have a little conversation with Sheila. And Sheila said, how's school? You know, what's your favorite subject? And she says, I don't like going to school anymore. I said, why not? None of the children want to share a desk with me because I'm sick. Because it's still very much a stigma. And also because she misses so much that it's difficult for her to catch up. And so we said, what would you like, and then I asked through the translation of Grace, what would you like us to pray for you? And she said, well, she says, she wishes she could be eating an egg at least once a week, because she can't take milk, and she has a hard time digesting milk. And so, yeah, this was another story that broke my heart and kind of made me complain. I said, you know, I tell God, if I can't do anything about it, why are you exposing me to this story? And so it was another one of those moments where I had to just break down before God and say, why did you bring me here, God? You know, kind of like that. So that's story number 2. That was my complaint number 2. Number 3, some of you might remember, this is Patrick Okore. Patrick Okore was one of the members of YCBM who is a wonderfully gifted worship leader. I don't know if you guys remember, we have a biggie, biggie God, oh, by my side, right? A biggie, biggie God, oh, by my side, by my side. And nobody can, like, imitate him when it comes to worship leading. And he's full of joy and energy. He was a volleyball star in his university days and all of that. And the beautiful lady next to him is his fiancée, Sarah. And last year, when I went to visit Patrick, he didn't have his usually bright smile with him. So I said, "What's wrong, Patrick?" And he wouldn't say. But later on, I found out that Sarah was diagnosed with a heart valve deficient, whatever. I don't know the exact medical term, but she needs a heart valve replacement surgery, basically, and they don't have the technical capabilities within Uganda, so they would have to fly her out to another country like South Africa or India or somewhere to do the surgery, and the costs involved in it, I asked him actually, did you ever do the research and blah, 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 and would be prohibitive, it would be impossible. So her parents basically kind of gave her up for dead, and she's just waiting and surviving, and her parents actually cut off the support for her. And so Patrick has been raising money and trying to support her for this past whole year. And in fact, when I was there in Kumi for a week, and we were having meetings, like, you know, practically every day that I was there, it was hard to see him because he was busy earning a living to try to support and to try to get medication for her and whatnot. I mean, the medication is basically like palliative. It's not a cure, obviously, because she needs surgery. And so I said, I hadn't met Sarah. I'd only heard of her. So let's go visit. Can I go visit Sarah? And I went to visit her, and she was staying with her sister, and she was in her bed. Right now, Patrick is kind of holding her up, but she's not able to sit up by herself. She's bedridden, a beautiful young lady of 25 years, and she's just waiting to die. And so, and Patrick has been faithful and staying, but it's challenging as a young man to support your fiancée and to watch her without hope. And that was another instance where I felt like, okay, God, why am I here if I can't do anything about it? Kind of thing. And so we prayed, and we put my hand together with Grace and Silver, who were there, and Patrick. And only thing that flowed was the tears, and I had no words except to say, have mercy. God have mercy. And so sometimes doing mission work is not easy, as I was going to say. It's sometimes you feel completely helpless, or you feel frustrated, or you feel angry, because you're like, why do I need to know the story? Why do I have to encounter this if I can't do anything about it, God? And it's so funny because it's a lesson I learn every year. I go back every year, and then when I actually experience it, and then I remember, because I think for me, the lesson that I learn every year is that God teaches me, actually, I didn't send you or bring you here so that you can be their savior. It's like duh, right? Duh, but I think there is a certain expectation or assumption that we go with if we put on the name of missionary. Remember, we just learned in our Sunday school class that everyone can be a missionary. Everyone is a missionary because we are sent by God. We are not sent by God to save. And God says, I want you to be with me. I want you to be one with my heart. The song that we sang, put your arms around the world and you will feel the beating heart of God, which means I want you to know my heart. I want you to feel what I'm feeling for my people. And every year, that's the center, and that's the beginning point, and that's the foundation of what I'm learning, is mission begins with knowing God's heart for God's people. Knowing God's heart for God's people. And to be standing with. The solidarity piece is, I think, another lesson I learn every year. It's not so that we can be saviors and, pat ourselves on the back and say, look at all the great works we've done, but to say, I am with them. I cry out with helplessness together. We stand with them. And that is very difficult for, I think, us in the kind of the Western mindset to stomach. Because we think, we have to provide solutions and, go forward and, be the saviors of the world. Save a village, But God teaches me again and again, wait a minute, wait. I want you to know what they've endured. I want you to learn what it is to wait upon the Lord, what it is to learn trust when there's nothing else to trust upon. You need to learn that, and that's the peace. That's the peace. And James says, consider it an opportunity for great joy. This is on your way to maturing. And maturing basically means to know God's heart with a little more depth, a little more insight, a little closer, so that we can be close enough to hear God's beating heart. So as the invitation maybe I want to make to the congregation, we are very excited with a lot of wonderful mission happenings at our church. We just did the Street Fest, all of that, and I think it echoes what Derek's message last Sunday, if you remember what Derek said, about radical hospitality and welcoming, not being forward, so that we can pat ourselves in the back and say, oh, how great we are. Okay? But as a way in our walk with God, that we walk not just in body, mind, but body, mind, and spirit, and in the heart. The mission work begins with aligning ourselves with God's heart and God's compassion, and aligning ourselves with the people who have no recourse but to stand and wait, because their salvation comes from God and only God. Thank you.
As we have heard the word